Welcome to the Curious Culture Club, where we unravel the mysteries of our world. Today, we pose a question. Is there any truth to the idea that governments are secretly controlling the weather? We're talking about weather manipulation conspiracy theories, ideas that have sparked intrigue and skepticism in equal measure. Are these theories mere flights of fancy, or could there be a grain of truth hidden in them? To understand the plausibility of these theories, let's dive into the history of weather manipulation. Weather modification is not a new concept. In fact, it dates back to the 1940s. It's an intriguing idea, isn't it? Humans trying to control the weather, something so vast and unpredictable. But let's take a look at the history of these efforts. The first major experiment in weather modification was cloud seeding, a process developed by scientist Vincent Schaefer in the late 1940s. The idea was to disperse substances into the air that would encourage cloud formation and precipitation. It was a bold step, but only the beginning. Fast forward to the 1960s, and we see the United States military getting involved. Operation Popeye was a covert attempt to extend the monsoon season over the Ho Chi Minh Trail during the Vietnam War with the aim of disrupting enemy supply lines. It was a real-life example of weather manipulation used as a weapon of war. Behind these techniques are scientific principles. In the case of cloud seeding, substances like silver iodide or liquid propane are used to encourage the growth of ice crystals in the supercooled water found in certain clouds. This process can lead to increased rainfall, turning a light drizzle into a downpour. Now that we know what weather modification is and how it's done, let's explore its role in government agendas. Hold on to your hats, folks, because the forecast is calling for a whirlwind of intrigue and speculation. There are documented instances of government involvement in weather modification programs. Yes, you heard that right. Governments across the globe have dipped their toes into the realm of weather manipulation. One of the most notable examples is cloud seeding, a technique used to increase rainfall. It's been employed by governments from China to the United States for purposes ranging from agricultural enhancement to Olympic Games preparation. The U.S. government's involvement in weather modification isn't a new phenomenon. Operation Popeye, a top-secret mission during the Vietnam War, aimed to extend the monsoon season and muddle enemy supply routes. It was so controversial that it led to the Environmental Modification Convention, an international treaty prohibiting the military use of weather modification. Research institutions aren't far behind. The National Center for Atmospheric Research and the Desert Research Institute are just two of many organizations delving into the science of weather modification. But let's not forget about the conspiracy theories. They range from the plausible to the downright bizarre. Some believe that governments are using weather as a weapon, creating hurricanes and droughts at will. Others claim that contrails from planes are actually chemtrails, secret government schemes to control the weather or even the population. But the question remains, are these actions part of a larger, more sinister plan? Well, that's something we'll continue to explore. After all, the weather isn't the only thing that's unpredictable. Conspiracy theories often hold a grain of truth, obscured by misinformation and fear. As we delve into the idea of government weather control, it's important to distinguish facts from fiction. Evidence supporting the notion of weather control comes from historic operations like Operation Popeye, where cloud seeding was used during the Vietnam War. However, these instances of weather modification were localized and temporary, far from the global control that conspiracy theories often suggest. Critics argue that these theories underestimate the sheer scale and complexity of weather systems. The scientific consensus on weather modification is that while we can influence local weather to some extent, global control remains beyond our reach. Still, the idea of covert weather modification raises serious ethical and legal questions. If governments can influence the weather, should they? Who decides when and where these techniques are used? And who bears the brunt of their potential consequences? Transparency is a key concern here. Without public knowledge and consent, such actions could be seen as a violation of trust. Additionally, there are potential risks to the environment and public safety. Altering weather patterns could have unanticipated ripple effects, upsetting ecosystems and causing unforeseen weather events. As we've seen, the truth is often more complex than it appears. The question of whether governments are controlling the weather is no exception. Let's take a closer look at some specific incidents often cited as evidence of government weather manipulation. First, we revisit Operation Popeye. This covert operation by the U.S. government during the Vietnam War aimed to extend the monsoon season over specific areas, impairing enemy logistics. The U.S. government finally acknowledged its existence in 1974, but stressed that it was localized and temporary, not a step towards global weather control. Next, we turn to the Beijing Weather Modification Office's efforts during the 2008 Olympics. The Chinese government openly used cloud seeding to ensure clear skies for the opening and closing ceremonies. This was a high-profile example of weather modification, but again, it was a local and temporary measure, not indicative of a capacity for widespread control. In both cases, critics argue that these instances of weather manipulation do not prove that governments can control the weather on a grand scale. Rather, they demonstrate our ability to influence, not control, weather under specific conditions. They also highlight the potential ethical and environmental issues we discussed earlier. These cases provide intriguing evidence, but they also raise more questions. If governments have the power to influence weather even on a small scale, what are the ethical implications? What checks and balances are in place to monitor this technology? And most importantly, how much more is happening behind closed doors that the public isn't aware of? As we delve deeper into this topic, the line between fact and fiction becomes increasingly blurred. Having explored the history, science, and conspiracy theories surrounding weather manipulation, it's clear that this is a complex and multifaceted issue. There is undeniable proof that weather modification has occurred on small, localized scales. However, the idea of governments controlling the weather on a global scale remains a subject of heated debate. The evidence we've presented in this video, from Operation Popeye to the Beijing Olympics, showcases our ability to influence the weather under specific conditions. The debate lies not in the possibility of weather manipulation, but in its extent, its ethical implications, and its potential misuse. The question of checks and balances, how this technology is monitored, and how much is happening behind closed doors remains a mystery. It's up to us to stay informed, question the narratives presented to us, and demand transparency where it's due. As we conclude this exploration, we encourage you to form your own opinions based on the evidence we've presented. Do you believe that weather manipulation is a tool used by governments for ulterior motives, or do you think it's a scientific endeavor for the greater good? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this intriguing topic. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Are you convinced by the evidence presented? Let us know in the comments below.